Hello there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. This dead fountain pen on the slab, ready for resurrection to the land of the writing again, is this 1932 Wahl-Eversharp DORIC Oversize lever filler celluloid pen in this gorgeous color called Morocco Pearl. This is a 12-faceted fountain pen in celluloid with gold furniture, and it belongs to my friend Murray. It's part of a collection of Dorics that he has given to me, not given to me, but given to me to restore and sell on my channel. There are various sizes. This is the largest. This is the oversize. This is also an oversize, but slightly smaller. There's 2 standard and 1 junior. And this green pearl celluloid is called Cashmere Pearl. In both of these pens, this blue-black is called Burma Pearl. And of course, this is the Morocco Pearl Red. They also came in a jet black color. And there was a variant on the green called Cafe Pearl, which was a lighter silver green kind of color. Well, first off, we're going to show this fountain pen right here before it's been restored all the way around. And we'll unscrew the cap and show the section and the nib. 14 karat gold large nib, number 6 size Ebonite feed. And down below we'll show what the pen looks like after it's been restored, for those of you that don't want to wait around for the 20 to 30 minutes it might take to restore this pen. There are a number of hardware and nib choices. All of these are lever fillers with the exception of this standard model, which is a pump or a vacuum fountain pen. And this one has a unique 14 karat gold adjustable nib point that has a 7 on the top, and you ratchet this overfeed up and down the nib to give the nib more or less flexibility. And it also has the Eversharp shutoff valve, which when you cap the pen, presses down on this lever and shuts off the ink flow to the pen so it doesn't burp or spill into the cap. And there are a number of different sizes of nib available as well. The number 6 size here on the left and the number 5 size here on the right. And there are a variety of cap bands from this beautiful Art Deco triangle style to this diamond shape to this slotted band on the junior. The Doric models with the lifetime guarantee had this double check Eversharp logo in a small gold dot right above the clip, whereas the non-lifetime warranty, more budget level pens didn't have that lifetime guarantee dot. And this is a military clip right here on this junior. Sits lower in the pocket. Over the next number of weeks, I'm going to try to restore all of these pens, but I'm going to start with the oversize. This is a relatively rare and desirably collectible pen. The facets are 12-sided and it is just gorgeous, even in its unrestored condition. But that's a lovely deco styling on that 1932 nib. So now let's triage this pen and see what it will take to restore back to the land of the writing. We see the conic top finial and that gorgeous celluloid. The celluloid isn't just in this cracked ice style. It has ribs and bars like feather-like black stripes inside that red translucent celluloid. Beautiful. All the way through the pen. The celluloid has a little bit of damage right here, whether that's someone chewing on the pen or a little heat damage, I'm not sure, but it has a rough texture to it. That can be polished out. And there's the gold double check Eversharp seal for lifetime warranty. We have a multifaceted clip which has made in the USA impressed on the very top facet, and it's a tie-shaped clip. There is the cap band. It has 12 facets to it, a lozenge shape on the top and a triangle on the bottom, and then the metal cap band curves down to the barrel. And the barrel tapers down to the end finial, and there's the gold lever. Right down the center facet at the back it says Wahl-Eversharp, made in the USA, and there's a breather hole, and a breather hole under the clip as well, and one on this side. People ask about those breather holes. They're there because this is a sac filling pen, and if you uncap and cap them quickly, it will depress or expand and shoot ink into the cap. So it equalizes the pressure. Other than the chewing marks on the very top of this pen, the rest of the cap is in pretty good shape, but the barrel has some chewing marks on the bottom as well. Lots of thought went into the writing with this pen, but there's two major gouges in the bottom part of this pen. One is right there, it's the big one, and there's a smaller one, but still very deep right there. Those look like melt marks, so it's either a cigarette or a match or something. That's not good for celluloid, because celluloid is flammable, very flammable. And other than that, the chew marks and some various scratches and so forth. I'm not going to be able to sand that out. It would completely change the shape of this 12-sided faceted pen, and that's not good. So I'm going to sand the rough edges down and polish it up as much as I can. That's going to remain a fingerprint of this vintage pen. So it takes one turn to remove the cap, and we see what looks like an Ebonite section with some old ink staining on it, and there's an ink window right there, which you can see, that transparent amber celluloid, and there's the nib that says Eversharp made in the USA 14K, and there is that deco underline under the Eversharp and that elongated breather hole. And there's the Ebonite feed, lots of ink channels on the bottom side of that feed. Back in 1932, people were just beginning to fly and have the issues of different pressure changes causing their lever filling fountain pens to express ink into their pockets, and so they started carving channels in here to accept the overflow. Now this section is shellacked down inside here. I heated it a little bit already to see whether it would budge, and it moved very easily. So just a tiny bit of heat and that section came out, and there are the remnants of the latex sac on the nipple of that section. You see our translucent ink window and the remnants of that sac on the inside. So I'm going to soak these parts in my ultrasonic machine filled with pen flush. My homemade pen flush is 9 parts distilled water and 1 part ammonia, and we'll let it sit in that ultrasonic bath for 2-3 minutes to soften everything up and loosen up some of that old ink. And then we'll come back and try to knock that nib and feed out of there and examine it further. And I'll try to dig out the remnants of that sac that you can see down on the inside of that pen, and we'll see if that lever is working properly. So I'm just going to trim off with my X-Acto blade the remnants of that old latex sac, and it's very sticky because of the shellac. It was used to affix it. Should just be able to peel it off here. Yeah, that's most of it. You can see some very Konpeki looking ink on there. So I assume Murray has used this pen with some Aurora Suzuki. I wouldn't recommend that, but you can do what you want with your pen. And there are the remnants of that old sac. It's still fairly pliable, but it's ossified right here, where the lever was pressing it, and of course falling apart here at the top. So that's a fairly large sac. So I'm going to replace that with a number 21 size. And just a couple of minutes in the pen flush bath, ultrasonic, and the barrel's looking great. The hardware is really starting to gleam, and the nib is looking terrific. So let's get the inspection camera out and see how that lever is functioning inside the barrel. Go down inside and take a look and give the lever a couple of tugs. And we can see that pressure bar still has some guck from the previous latex sac in it. So I'll let this soak a little bit more and try to tease out those fragments from inside that barrel. Now let's get out our block and see whether we can tap that feed out of there. And get a rod out, a hammer, and see whether it'll tap. Yep, very easy. The section, and there's our nib and feed. So let's take the nib and take a look at it up here. Looking pretty good now that it's been sitting in the pen flush for a bit. Nice and shiny, but we'll get it shined up a little bit more. And what do we have on the bottom? It says Mani, M-A-N-I, right there, which stands for manifold. So this is a manifold nib, and manifold means many copies. They would use this stiffer kind of nib to get through many carbon copies. If you're making multiple copies of a document that you're writing, you'd put carbon paper between the pages, and you'd have to press down to make multiple copies. We'll put it over here and see what it looks like before I polish it, and then we'll see what it looks like polished up over there. Let's do the same thing with the feed. I'll polish up just the visible part of that feed right there, and maybe just a little bit of that tail, but I don't want to disturb those ink channels at all. Looks pretty well free of ink all the way around. I'll let it sit in the pen flush bath a little bit more just to agitate out any of that old crusty ink in there. Let's take a look at the section here. It is Ebonite and it looks pretty good. No flaws on it, no burn marks, no chew marks, and that nipple looks like it's in good shape as well. So here we are with the nib feed and section all polished. We'll put it over here on this side so you can see what it looks like. Almost brand new. That's the beauty of gold on the front and the back. Gotta love gold. I do. And here's the feed. Put it over here. Beautiful Ebonite. Shines up just like a piano. And there's our Ebonite section, all nice and shiny. I also took some 400 grit sandpaper and roughed up that nipple so it will be ready to accept a new sack. And I'll get the barrel out of the pen flush and see how well it's cleaned up. And here's the barrel. That lever works perfectly and it looks very, very clean. It actually looks like it has been replaced, looking shiny and doesn't look any bit of its age. So I've got a feeling that pressure bar has been replaced whenever the previous sack was replaced. So I'm going to put this nib and feed back in the section again so I can use the pen as a holder to test that nib to see whether it needs any kind of tuning or anything or adjustment. And once that's okay, then we'll go ahead and resack this pen. So I put the section just loosely in that barrel, and we're going to put our finger cuts on, grab some gripper material and lay that nib on that feed just about there. There's always a little bit of a divot right there for that feed to sit inside, and we're going to grip it top and bottom with this rubber mat, and we're going to see how well it fits into this section by giving it a bit of a shove. Usually that nib and feed have been set originally, like back in 1932. They would have set in a certain position, probably heat set it, and you can sort of feel that little divot as you go around. So it's just about there. So I'm going to give this a push. It does not want to go all the way in. It should go a lot deeper than that. We've got lots of cap clearance, so that's not the issue. But I think that nib needs to be down here around the 14K, right there at the section. So I'm going to tap this out again. And we're going to see where that feed likes to sit. Well, what do you know? I'm wrong. That feed wants to sit right there. And that's because there's a ridge. Whether you can see it or not, there's a ridge right there built into the section that stops the end of the feed from going all the way through. That makes the nib look very long to me, because that nib needs to come to about there. Well, we'll try it again. And maybe it wants to live there. If it wants to live there, then it's going to live there. I'm not going to argue with it. Find that sweet spot again, right there, and push it as far as it will go, and then make sure it's lined up properly. That looks just about right. And yep, it's just sitting very, very proud. So it looks large, doesn't it? It doesn't ruin the look of the pen at all because this is such a big pen. And we've got lots of cap clearance, so we don't need to worry about that nib touching the inside of the cap and damaging it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dip test this nib and see how it writes. And take a look at its alignment. It looks like it's aligned perfectly at this point. Let's grab some paper and some Watermans, no Konpeki, for this pen. Well, it's in my possession anyway. And we're going to dip test this nib. Dip it in the ink. Lots of big channels for that ink to stay in there. That's good. And we're going to call this a 1932 Wahl-Eversharp DORIC. And I would say this is a fine 14 karat gold nib. Let's check the wetness here. It could be a little bit wetter. Let's check the line width, both vertically and horizontally. And let's see what kind of a flex this manifold nib has. Just a touch. It is indeed a manifold nib. So let's try that. Push. And there's a good deal of feedback. The nib is nicely aligned, so there's no scratch. But I think I'll polish that out a little bit. I'm going to get out my 8,000 grit and 12,000 grit micro mesh. Start with 8,000, a little bit of water, and we're going to do 8 strokes up and down all points of the compass, counterclockwise circles, clockwise, infinity symbols, and figure 8s in the 8,000 grit. And now we'll do it in the 12,000 grit too. That's much better, much smoother. Give it some more ink here. Yeah, just a beautifully writing fountain pen. And no pressure needed to get a nice line. So let's resack this pen now and see how much ink it'll take. So I've got a 21.5-inch sack here that's necked, and I've trimmed it off to the point where the sack on the nipple would come to there, the section would come to there, and so the sack would go all the way down to there. And I measured the depth by putting a rod inside and checking the depth of that to make sure that sack goes almost to the bottom. And so we're going to put the sack on the sack spreader and do a dry run here. Just get that latex sack down there flush against the section, and it fits widthwise, and it's just shy of the bottom, just where that pressure bar curves at the bottom of that barrel. So now let's do this for real. We'll get out a shellacker pen from the Inky Nib and rotate the end of the knob there. Get a little bit of shellac going, and we're just going to paint that nipple with some shellac all the way around. Put the sack on the sack spreader. We're going to get it up under that lip. Give it a slight bit of a turn. There we go. Make sure it's nice and straight, and make sure it doesn't want to push itself back off again, because that shellac, when it's wet, is slippery and it wants to jump back off like a balloon. I'm going to get my shellacker pen again, and we're just going to paint a bead of shellac all the way around, just like that, to make sure there's no leaks. And then we'll let that dry for several hours, and when we come back, I'll add some talc to this. We'll put it back in the barrel, and we'll check to see how much ink this sack will accommodate. Okay, I've let this dry overnight, and we're ready to install that section and nib into the barrel. And we need to add some talc so that the latex doesn't stick to the inside of the barrel. You know that latex is sticky stuff. If you've ever tried to put on a wetsuit, you'll know. And we're going to position the nib so that the lever and the nib line up. And I'm going to just heat that barrel a little bit with my heat gun to expand that celluloid, get it a little bit warm, so it'll melt that extra shellac in place and hold the section in place without too much shellac. So if we need to restore or resack this pen in the future, it'll be an easy remove. And we'll give it a push and a turn. And it's actually turning in there now, so I'm going to heat it a little bit more until that shellac melts a little bit, and then it will hold it in place. You just feel it start to stick. A little compressed air cools that right off and holds it in place. Now let's weigh this pen, and it weighs 10.25 grams. Pressed hair, and let's fill it with some Watermans. So dip the nib into the section, pull on the lever, and then let it go and hold it there for 5 to 10 seconds. And I'm just going to repeat until I get no more bubbles. And we have 1.2 milliliters of ink. Excellent. Okay, so I took the section out again, put that aside while I focus on polishing up this cap and barrel. This is going to be a challenge in that you can't just polish it willy-nilly because you'll lose those little vertices there. You can already see that capping the pen has dropped off some of those points on those sides, and so I'm going to have to use my micro mesh along these flats to maintain them. And I'm just going to take out the wear and any scratches that I can get at that aren't too deep, because I don't want to lose any of that shape. So that melting spot right there and that one right there are going to have to remain, but we'll go after the rest of it, and I'm pretty sure I can get those chew marks out of the top of that cap, and we'll mask off that cap band until we get down to about 4,000 grit. So I'm going to go through my grits from 1,500 through 12,000, But I'm going to go at some of those chew marks and deeper scratches with some 400 grit first, and then go through the micromesh. So let's put the barrel up here so you can see what it looks like before I've polished it on all of its facets, all the way around, and all those chew marks. And then we'll put the cap up here with all of its facets and all those chew marks in the cap. Hopefully we can get those out, and then look at the clip and the cap band. Well, here we have the cap and barrel all polished up like new. Let's take a look at the barrel down here, and you can see how deep those burn marks are there. I assume they're burn marks. It looks like it, like a cigarette or a match came into contact with it. But I got most of the major gouges out, and there's another major gouge there, and most of the chew marks out. Some were very, very deep. As you can see, it's looking beautiful now. Let's take a look at the cap. Of course, that clip polished up beautifully, and the cap band is extraordinary with all those facets and that deco styling. It's really quite beautiful. Let's take a look at the bite marks. You can see I got most of them out, but there's some that were still so deep that you don't want to lose that much material. And the imprint is still there, nice and prominent, but it doesn't look quite so chewed up as it did. But we don't want to lose all the patina and age on this pen. Purists would say we need to leave that personality in. I agree that there is some personality and some life in this pen, and to remove those completely would completely change the character of this pen. So we're not going to do that. Let's put the nib back in the pen. We'll retalc the latex sac, and this time I'm going to put some shellac on that section, because even with that little bit of shellac right there, it's not keeping it from turning. So I'm going to use my shellac brush, and we're going to paint a line of shellac around that section, just like that. We're going to line up the nib with the lever, and I'm going to get a gripper, and we're going to push this in. There we go. Just straighten it up. We'll use a tissue to get off any extra shellac, and there we are. Now all I have to do is ink the pen back up again and do a writing sample. 1932 Wahl-Eversharp DORIC Oversize, and it has a 14 karat gold fine nib. And I measured this out to be the horizontal lines are 0.25, the vertical lines are 0.4, and if you push it a little bit, you can get out to 0.6. And it's nicely wet. I opened those tines a little bit more to make more ink flow, so it's a little bit wetter, and I smoothed it as well with some 8,000 grit, and then followed by 12,000 grit micromesh. And this is just a joyful pen to write with, and it's a nice size and very light for such a large pen. Very, very light. And the name of this color is Morocco Pearl, and the pen is 142 millimeters long, and the barrel is 12.5 millimeters thick, and that section at the base is 10.3 millimeters, and the length of the section is 16.2 millimeters. So it's a good sized pen, and I'll be back with my thoughts about this resurrection. So what are my thoughts about this resurrection? Well, this one was a lot of fun and a bit daunting. This is not an inexpensive pen. This is not a pen that you see everywhere. This is relatively rare. 1932 Wahl-Eversharp DORIC Oversize. And the first thing I need to do is to thank Murray for entrusting me with his Eversharp Doric collection to restore and sell for him. There was nothing overly difficult about restoring this pen, other than trying to polish out some of the abrasions and chew marks and nicks and scratches and gouges that were in this 94-year-old fountain pen. Now, I don't believe in taking a fountain pen like this and removing all of the age. It's nice to have it shined up and functional, have the nib all shined up like it's brand new and functional, where there's evidence of the pen having lived a 94-year-old life. I think it's important to leave those elements of age in. Some restorers call that a patina. And I know in other antiques like furniture and things like that, a fully refinished vintage piece of furniture is worth less than one that has the original finish, even with all of its flaws. It shows that the pen has been used over the years and the pen has some history. So trying to get those flaws out of this pen would substantially change the nature of it and the shape of it, and I think probably mar it and make it less desirable and less interesting. The pen itself has a very large ink sac and takes 1.2 milliliters of ink. The nib is beautiful in that deco style with the elongated breather hole and that beautiful vintage Ebonite feed, and it is a manifold nib that writes an extra fine line with a slight amount of bounce to it. But again, no effort whatsoever. It's just a lovely, lovely writer. And this is a big pen. Posted, it's very long. Here it is with a Pilot Metropolitan posted, and you can see how very long this pen is. But being so light, it is really quite marvelous in the hand and doesn't back weight that pen at all. So this is very easy to write with. And I got to tell you, out of the 5, I decided to do this one first because it is so exquisitely beautiful. This wine-colored celluloid called Morocco Pearl, and the facets, the 12-sided facets of this pen, along with the 12-sided cap band with those deco stylings, make this pen truly remarkable and really eye-catching.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
And I'm just going to interrupt this conclusion of this resurrection to do an unboxing because I just got this package at my front door while I was filming, and the pen that's inside here I think is a nice comparison with this in terms of color anyway, and I thought you might like to see this. And here we go. They call it a Parker Vacuumatic Red Stripe fountain pen, but I know it as a Parker Vacuumatic first generation Burgundy Pearl Vacuumatic with a lockdown filler. So this is circa 1933 through 37. So I get my loop out and find out if there's a date code. The date code on there is 17 with a single dot. So I'm thinking that is 1937. So here is a 1932 Wahl-Eversharp Doric in Morocco Pearl, red pearl. And here is the competitor, just a few years later, in Burgundy Pearl. What makes this pen so special to me especially is that these first generation, first of all, are really the classic pen. They have the top jewel is the same material as the barrel and the cap. It has double jewels, and the sections are the same material. I love all the Parker Vacuumatics, but the Vacuumatics from the first generation are the ones that are really, really interesting. I think they hit it out of the park with this, and then after the war, they made some economies with how they made these pens. So, Murray's pen, my pen. And I can't wait to restore this pen. So, back to our regular programming.
We return you now to your regularly scheduled program.
So this pen is for sale. It is not mine. I'm selling it on behalf of my friend Murray. And those of you who had missed it, I did an interview with my friend Murray where we talked for about an hour and a half or so about desk pens, vintage desk pens and modern desk pens. And you can see that video by clicking right up there. But I just got off the phone with Murray and discussed the pricing of this pen, and he's decided to sell this pen for $630 US plus shipping. Of course, those of you that are members will get discounts. So basic members will get 10% off or $567 US, and patron members will get 20% off or $504 US plus shipping. If you're interested in purchasing this pen, please email me at inkquiringminds@gmail.com, and I'll give you instructions on how to pay my PayPal and give you a quote on your shipping. And there you have it. Thanks go out to my friend Murray for allowing me to restore this beautiful Art Deco 1932 Wahl-Eversharp Doric Oversize pen in Morocco red. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month, and I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section. You'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them, as well as the aforementioned discounts on vintage restored pens. And that just leaves it for me to say, thank you. for watching. And that's all she wrote.
I made this.